Imagine a tiny town with no stoplight, where the wind is the loudest thing, until 5 men with rifles hide behind a dumpster, ready to massacre 35 Hell's Angels, but a 13-year-old deaf girl sees everything in silence. She has no voice to scream, no way to call 911, yet in 30 seconds, her silent warning saves 35 lives. Hook. What if the quietest person in the room became the loudest hero? Dust devils spun down Main Street in Silver Springs, Nevada, a town so small it didn't need a stoplight. The loudest sound most days was wind rattling the single bar's wooden sign. Inside that bar, 35 Hell's Angels sat drinking beer and planning their annual ride, unaware that across the street behind a dumpster, 5 men crouched with rifles and murder on their minds. Year-old Sofia Rodriguez watched it all unfold in complete silence. Not because she chose silence, but because she'd been born deaf, her world one of signs, lip-reading, and constant misunderstanding. She had 30 seconds to warn them using a voice she didn't have. By sunset, her silent scream would save 35 lives and prove that sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that never make a sound. Hook. She couldn't speak, couldn't shout, couldn't even call for help, but what she did next shocked everyone. Sofia Rodriguez had lived 13 years in silence, a Latina deaf girl in a Nevada town where nobody knew ASL, where teachers gave up trying to help her, where bullies mocked her signing and called her the mute. When she saw 5 armed gang members ready to ambush and massacre 35 Hell's Angels drinking in the town's only bar, she had no voice to scream, no way to call 911, no way to warn them except frantic signs no hearing person understood. She ran into that bar anyway, writing and signing while 35 bikers stared, confused, as seconds ticked away. "Men with guns outside waiting for you," she wrote in shaking letters. What happened next proved that 35 Hell's Angels could give voice to 250 deaf children, and that being deaf doesn't mean being silent when lives are at stake. The classroom smelled like cafeteria food and teenage sweat. Sofia sat in the back corner of her 8th grade English class, watching Mrs. Patterson's mouth form words she couldn't hear. The teacher had stopped using the microphone for Sofia's hearing aids weeks ago, said it was too much trouble. Sofia's notepad was filled with guesses at what was being taught. Her ASL dictionary sat beside her, pages worn, though no one in this school signed except her. In a town of 200 people, she was the only deaf student. The bell rang. She felt the vibration through her desk. Bodies surged around her, talking and laughing in sounds she'd never heard. Someone knocked her notebook off her desk. "Oops, sorry, mute," said Jessica Chen, her cruelty clear even without sound. Sofia kept her eyes down. Survival strategy: be invisible. She'd learned it young after her parents moved from Las Vegas when she was 6, chasing her father's job at the lithium mine. In Vegas, she'd gone to a school with other deaf kids, teachers who signed, a real community. Here, she was alone. The hallway was chaos, lockers slamming, students shouting, visual noise everywhere. Sofia navigated like a maze, watching for bullies who loved to stand behind her and laugh when she didn't react. She made it to her locker, grabbed her lunch, and sat alone near the emergency exit in the cafeteria. She ate a sandwich her mother packed, reading a book about Helen Keller. At least Helen had Anne Sullivan. Sofia had nobody except her parents, who loved her but couldn't protect her, and her little brother Miguel, who was 7, hearing, and perfect in ways she wasn't. A shadow fell across her table. 3 boys stood there, Brad Morrison and his friends. Brad's mouth moved in exaggerated motions, his friends laughing. Sofia couldn't read it. He was making it impossible on purpose. She looked down. One grabbed her sandwich. She reached for it. He held it high, mouth moving in silent laughter. The monitor looked away. This was her life. Small cruelties in a world that heard everything except her. She let them have the sandwich and ate an apple instead. They got bored and left. Sofia finished lunch in silence, not chosen but forced on her before birth, when something went wrong and stole sound before she knew it existed. After school, Sofia walked home the long way, avoiding buses full of shouting kids. Silver Springs was built around mining, houses scattered between scrubland and Joshua trees, everything covered in red dust. Her family's house was small but clean, windows spotless despite dust storms. She did homework at the kitchen table, struggling with lessons she couldn't hear. Her mother, Elena, came home from the mine office and signed basic signs learned from YouTube. How was school? Sophia signed back. Same. It meant terrible. Her mother knew. They'd tried to transfer Sophia to the deaf school in Las Vegas, but it meant boarding and they couldn't afford it. They'd tried to get an ASL interpreter, but the district said no budget. They'd tried everything except making Sophia hearing. After dinner, Sophia sat on the porch watching the sunset, pink and orange across the sky. No need to communicate, just beauty. A lizard ran across the planks and vanished. Small life surviving in harsh places. She understood that. The rumble came through the ground before she saw them. Motorcycles, 20 or 30, rolling down Main Street toward the Dusty Boot, the town's only bar, Hell's Angels, her father had said, showing their death's head patches. They came through every few months. Her father said dangerous. Her mother said just men who liked bikes. Sophia thought they looked like family, riding in formation. Same patches. She watched them park, in a neat line of chrome and leather, and disappear, inside. The next day was Saturday. Her mother worked. Overtime, her father was underground. For 3 days, Miguel was at a friend's house. The friend who included him, but never Sophia. Sophia was alone, which was freeing and isolating. She walked to the library, the only place she felt okay. Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, knew basic signs and smiled with real warmth. Today she had a new book, a biography of Niall DeMarco, the deaf model and activist. Sophia checked it out, feeling hope that someone deaf could matter. On her walk home, she cut through the alley behind Main Street, shorter, quieter. The alley ran behind the Dusty Boot, past dumpsters and hidden spaces. That's when she saw them. 5 men crouched behind the large dumpster. Not locals. Rough, with gang tattoos on their arms, weapons in their hands, not handguns. Rifles, long barrels, held with practice. Sophia froze, her heart hammered, the only internal sound she knew. They hadn't seen her. They watched the bar's back exit. She couldn't hear their plans, but she saw the intent, checking weapons, one gesturing toward the door. They were waiting to kill. Sophia's mind raced. The Hell's Angels were inside. She'd seen them an hour ago, bikes still out front. This was an ambush. She needed to warn them, but how? She couldn't yell, couldn't call 911. She could text, but in an emergency they'd want to call, and she couldn't explain fast enough. The sheriff's office was 10 blocks away, too far. By the time she wrote it down, it would be over. The bar was 30 feet away. The men with guns blocked the back door, but the front was around the corner. She could run there. But then what? She couldn't scream. She had no voice, except she did, not sound, but communication. Her hands, her notepad, the desperate courage of someone who'd been unheard for 13 years and refused to let 35 people die. Sophia ran. The front door of the Dusty Boot was weathered wood that stuck. She yanked it open and burst inside, dim light, smell of beer and sawdust. Men in leather vests turned to look at her. A small Latina girl, 13, breathing hard, eyes wild with fear. She pulled out her notepad with shaking hands, wrote in huge letters, "Men with guns outside waiting for you." But her hands shook. The pen was dry. The message was messy. Some bikers looked confused. One smiled like it was a prank. Sophia made a sound, not words, but frustration from her throat, raw and uncontrolled. Then she signed frantic ASL. She knew they wouldn't understand, but maybe the passion would. Danger, guns outside, men hiding. They will kill you. Tears streamed down her face. This was her nightmare, needing to be heard with no working voice. Most bikers looked lost, but one man stood up from the back. Massive, 6'4", gray beard, eyes that had seen things. His vest said "Silent" on the president patch. He walked toward Sophia and signed, "Slow down, tell me what's wrong." Sophia's eyes widened. He knew ASL. She could communicate. She signed clearly now, hands steady. 5 men behind bar, rifles, hiding behind dumpster, waiting to ambush you. They will shoot when you leave. Silent's face went hard. He turned, signed to one of his men, then pulled out his phone. He typed and showed Sophia. "Are you sure? How many? What weapons?" Sophia typed back. "Yes, 5 men, long rifles, gang tattoos, behind the dumpster, out back, waiting to kill you." Silent showed the message to his vice president, Blade. Blade looked at Sophia, then Silent, then called someone. Sophia watched his body, urgent, serious, believing. Blade had called the sheriff. The bikers stayed inside, away from windows. Silent positioned men by doors. Sophia stood in the center, this deaf girl who'd run toward danger because silence didn't mean powerless. The sheriff arrived with 3 deputies, lights flashing, no sirens. Sophia watched through the window as they surrounded the alley, weapons drawn. 5 men pulled out, forced down, rifles taken, handcuffed, arrested. 8 minutes. If Sophia hadn't warned them, if the bikers had walked out the back as planned, 35 men would have died in crossfire with nowhere to run, the sheriff confirmed later. Rival gang, retaliation, picked Silver Springs because it was remote. They never expected a deaf girl who refused to stay silent. After arrests, the sheriff took statements. Sophia sat with Silent, using his phone to answer. "How did you know?" "I saw them in the alley. Rifles, gang tattoos, hiding, waiting. I knew they would hurt someone." "Why not call 911? "I'm deaf. I can't call. Text takes too long in emergency." Bar was closer. The deputy looked at her with awe. "You saved a lot of lives today, young lady." Silent signed. "Sophia, you saved my life. All of us." He typed, "My brother is deaf. I learned ASL for him. If you hadn't signed, I wouldn't have understood in time. You used your voice differently, but you saved us. Do you understand?" Sophia nodded, signed, "I couldn't let them die. I had to warn you even if no one could hear me." Silent smiled, signed, "We heard you perfectly." Hook. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of something no one saw coming. That night, the chapter met at a motel. Silent stood before 35 men alive because of a 13-year-old deaf girl. Her name is Sofia Rodriguez. She's 13. Only deaf student in her school. No interpreter, no support, no one who signs except me now. She ran toward men with guns to save us because she couldn't stay silent. I asked about her life. Bullied, isolated, struggles in school, eats lunch alone every day. Blade asked, "What's the plan, Prez?" Silent pulled out a folder. No deaf school within 150 miles. Closest in Las Vegas, expensive. We build one here. Free. For deaf and hearing kids across rural Nevada. Hire deaf teachers. Teach ASL to hearing students. Real community. Call it Sophia's Sign Academy. The room went quiet. Then, how much? Building and land, $500,000. Staffing 5 years, $200,000. Equipment, $100,000. Total, $800,000, someone whistled. Silent said, "Sophia used her voice differently to save us. We're giving voice to 250 deaf kids, a place where kids like her never eat lunch alone." The word went out to Hell's Angels chapters across Nevada, California, Utah, Arizona. The story spread. A deaf girl saved 35 lives by running into danger with no voice. The Brotherhood answered. Phoenix sent $80,000, San Francisco, $95,000, Los Angeles, $110,000. Smaller chapters sent $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Individuals donated. Strangers who heard the story gave. In 3 months, $850,000. They bought 2 acres on the edge of town with mountain views, hired architects for accessible design, built a beautiful 1-story school, large windows, wide halls, visual alerts, classrooms made for signing, hired 5 deaf teachers, 2 fluent hearing teachers, a principal from a California deaf school, bought video phones, captioning, vibrating alarms, tech Sophia had only read about, offered free enrollment K-12 to deaf and hearing kids across rural Nevada, ASL classes for hearing students, true bilingual community. Sophia's parents cried when Silent and Blade showed up with plans. This is for Sophia. Because she saved us. Because she deserves not to be alone. We can't afford private school. It's free. Forever. Hell's Angels fund it permanently. Why for strangers? Her father asked. She's not a stranger, Blade said. She's family. She saved our lives. Hell's Angels never forget a debt. The school took 8 months to build. Sophia finished 8th grade still alone, still bullied, but now with hope. Every weekend, Silent picked her up, showed her the site. They walked framed rooms. This will be the library. This the art room. This your classroom. Sophia couldn't believe it. A school where she could sign. Teachers who understood. Kids like her. Other students enrolled. Kids from tiny towns, isolated like her, struggling or homeschooled. Found students first year. Goal, 250 in 5. Opening day, September 15th. Sophia walked through doors of Sophia's Sign Academy. Her name on a plaque, her story on a mural. 15 students signing in the hall. Her teacher, Miss Carla Washington, a deaf black woman with 20 years' experience, signed, "Welcome. You are safe here. You are heard here. You will thrive here." For the first time in 8 years, Sophia ate lunch with friends. They signed about TV, families being deaf in hearing towns. One girl, Emma from Elko, signed, "I thought I was the only one bullied for being deaf." Sophia signed, "We all did, but not here. Here, we're the majority." The school was everything promised. Visual alarms flashed for bells. Teachers signed fluently. Hearing kids learned ASL. Signing was cool, not weird. Library had captioning, books on deaf culture. Walls showed deaf leaders, scientists, artists, athletes, activists. Sophia thrived. Grades soared when lessons were in her language. She made real friends. Joined art club, created pieces about visualizing sound, what silence looked like. She was no longer the girl in the back corner. She was Sophia Rodriguez, student at a school named for her courage. 6 months later, Hell's Angels held a ceremony. 5 members from 6 states filled the parking lot and gym. Silent stood with Sophia at the podium, signing as he spoke. 6 months ago, Sophia saw men with guns planning to kill us. She couldn't scream, couldn't call, but she ran anyway, used signs and a notepad, saved 35 lives. 50 Carl bikers applauded deaf style, hands raised, waving, visual celebration. We built this school because Sophia deserves a place where sign language isn't a disability, it's a superpower. Where being deaf doesn't mean isolated, where 250 kids can grow in a community that gets them. He turned to Sophia. Signed, "You used your voice differently to save us. We're giving voice to 250 kids like you. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for showing us being deaf doesn't mean silent." Sophia stepped up, signed, interpreted by Miss Washington. "I was scared that day. Thought I couldn't help because I'm deaf. But I see things hearing people miss. I watch everything. I communicate differently. That difference saved lives. Being deaf isn't broken. It's different. And different is powerful." The gym exploded in visual applause. 50 bikers waving for a girl who'd turned silence into strength. Silent handed her an envelope. $50,000 education trust fund. "You saved my life," he signed. "We're making sure you build yours." 5 years passed. Sophia graduated valedictorian from Sophia's Sign Academy, fluent in ASL and English, confident, strong. The school grew to 180 students, waiting list. A model for rural deaf education in national media, visited by educators. Sophia got into Gallaudet University, full scholarship to study deaf education. She wanted to teach. Build more schools like hers. At graduation, Silent sat front row with his brother Danny, both signing congratulations. Hell's Angels filled half the gym. Sophia's speech in ASL. Interpreted 5 years ago, I was alone. Bullied. Ate lunch by myself. Thought being deaf meant less. Then I saved lives. And those lives saved mine back. They built me a school where I learned deaf doesn't mean disabled, it means I experience the world differently. Where sign language is beautiful. where community matters most. She looked at Silent, signed to him. You said I use my voice differently. You were right. Now I'll use it to teach deaf kids they're not alone. Not less, they're enough. Visual applause shook the room. 10 years later, Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, PhD from Gallaudet, returned as principal of Sofia's Sign Academy. 50 students. High school added. Waiting list of 100.15 graduates to college. 3 to Gallaudet. Changed Silver Springs. The town learned ASL businesses, schools, sheriff's office. Signs in windows. ASL spoken here. Hearing kids taught friends. Deaf culture became town culture. Sophia walked halls watching kids sign, laugh, learn. Emma was a senior, heading to RIT for engineering. Miguel worked as a hearing interpreter, bilingual in Spanish, English. Still in the main hall. A photo from 10 years ago, Sophia at 13 with Silent and 35 Hells Angels outside the Dusty Boot. All signing thank you. Plaque beneath. Sofia Rodriguez saved 35 lives by refusing to be silent. Her courage built this school. Her voice, through signs not sounds, gave voice to 250 deaf children. Being deaf does not mean being silent. It means speaking a different language, and that language saved lives and built community. Sophia stood before it every morning, remembering the terrified 13-year-old who ran toward danger. Because silence didn't mean powerless, that girl thought she was voiceless. She was wrong. She'd had the loudest voice in Silver Springs that day. Just spoken. Differently. Every year, Silent came to graduation. Now 68, beard white, still president. After ceremony, he and Sophia stood together. He signed the same thing. You saved my life. We gave you community. Fair trade, Sophia signed. Not even close. You gave me everything. No, Silent corrected, signing slowly. You already had everything, courage, compassion, refusal. To let people die because warning them was hard. We just built you a stage to show it. The voice was always yours. 20 years after 5 men waited with rifles, Principal Sofia Rodriguez locked up the school and walked to her car. Main Street quiet, just wind, dust, Nevada sunset. She paused at the Dusty Boot, still standing, still serving beer. She thought of the girl she was, isolated, bullied. Sure, she was less because she couldn't hear. She thought of 30 seconds of courage that changed everything. Running toward danger saved 35 lives, built a school, created community. Being deaf once seemed like a disability. Now she knew. It was just a different way to experience the world. And sometimes, that difference was exactly what the world needed. She couldn't hear danger coming, but she could see it. And seeing it saved lives. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez drove home through Silver Springs, through a town that signed, past a school named for her courage, carrying the truth she'd learned at 13. Silence isn't absence of voice, it's just voice expressed differently. And sometimes, the most important voices are the ones that never make a sound.